The capital city of Valoria Prime was alive with light and sound. Huge towers of glass reached toward the sky, their surfaces glowing with shifting colors. Bridges of shining stone connected plazas where alien citizens gathered. For the people of Valoria, this was a day of joy. It was the day of unity. When the Queen and her family appeared before the citizens to remind them of peace, prosperity, and tradition, Commander Daniel Hayes walked with steady steps at the edge of the royal escort. He was human, one of only a few dozen humans allowed inside Valoria Prime. Most humans were seen as traders or explorers, never as guards. But Hayes was different. Earth had sent him with the delegation to learn and observe. Somehow, after proving himself disciplined and reliable, he had been asked to stand among the ceremonial guards for the royal family. He had not expected this honor, or the weight of it. The aliens were taller than him, their blue skin shimmering under the light, their eyes large and glowing. The air carried the sweet scent of their flowers, laid everywhere in the square. Hayes kept his expression calm, but inside he was alert. Years of soldier training made him scan every corner, every rooftop. Every shadow. At the center of the grand square stood a raised platform where Queen Alira would soon speak. Her daughter, Princess Soraya, stood at her side. The princess was young, barely a teenager in human years, dressed in flowing white robes that sparkled in the sunlight. She looked nervous, holding her mother's hand tightly. The crowd cheered with soft musical voices, waving bright banners that carried the Queen's crest to the Valorians. This was a time of peace. To Hayes, peace always carried danger. The Queen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the square through hidden amplifiers. "My people," she said, her words smooth and practiced. "Today, we honor our unity. Today we remind ourselves that our strength is in tradition, our safety is in order, and our future is in the hands of those who keep balance." The crowd answered with cheers and light-filled symbols floating above their heads. Hayes watched the rooftops again. He noticed the shifting of shadows where none should have been. His hand twitched toward the plasma sidearm at his belt, though he was here for ceremony, not combat. He frowned, studying the movement. Then, in a split second, the peace shattered. A searing bolt of plasma fire streaked down from above, tearing into the edge of the stage. Stone exploded into shards, smoke rising into the clear air. The crowd screamed in panic. Banners fell. More bolts followed, raining from hidden positions. The royal guards shouted orders, raising energy shields. Some citizens collapsed under the force of the shockwave. Chaos spread through the square like wildfire. Princess Soraya froze, too close to the blast, her eyes wide with terror. Hayes moved before he could think. His boots pounded against the stone as he dashed forward. Time seemed to slow around him. Another plasma bolt cut through the air, aimed straight for the young princess. Without hesitation, Hayes threw himself over her, wrapping his arms around her small frame. The blast struck his back with blinding pain. Heat burned through his armor, flesh tearing. The shock drove the breath from his lungs, but he held tight, shielding her with his body. He could hear the hiss of plasma against his armor, the crack of broken stone, the cries of terrified citizens. Soraya's voice trembled beneath him. "Why? Why would you?" He had no answer. Not now. His only thought was simple. She must live. The royal guards rushed in, forming a protective circle. Energy shields flared, blocking the next wave of fire. Some guards dragged the Queen to cover, while others fired back at the hidden attackers. Hayes barely heard them. His vision blurred from the pain. Blood seeped through his uniform, staining the platform beneath him. But when he looked down, the princess was unharmed. Not a scratch on her. Her large silver eyes stared up at him, filled with shock and confusion. "Stay low," he whispered, his voice hoarse. The guards lifted Soraya from his arms, pulling her to safety. Hayes slumped onto the stone, his strength fading. He could hear the roar of combat, but it felt distant. It's like waves crashing far away. The Queen's voice carried through the smoke. "Protect the child," she cried, her usually calm tone sharp with fear, as the guards led Soraya away. Her gaze never left Hayes. She looked at him as if she could not understand why he was lying there, bleeding for her minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The attackers were finally driven back, their weapons silenced, their bodies fleeing into the city's underways. The square was ruined craters of black stone, shattered decorations, terrified citizens scrambling for safety. But the royal family was alive, and Hayes was alive, though barely. He felt hands lifting him, strange alien voices calling for medics. His body resisted, but his mind clung to one thought. Mission complete. The girl lives. Darkness swallowed him before he could say another word. When Hayes opened his eyes again, it was to the soft glow of healing lights. He lay inside a royal medical chamber, alien machines humming softly around him. His back ached like fire, but breathable air filled his lungs. Strange liquid flowed into his veins from tubes, easing the pain. At the side of his bed stood Queen Alira. She was tall, her robes glowing faintly, her crown simple but elegant. Her glowing eyes fixed on him, sharp with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "You are awake," she said quietly. Hayes tried to sit up, but the pain forced him back. "The princess. She lives," Alira answered, "because of you." There was silence. The queen studied him like one might study a dangerous artifact. No one of Valoria would have done what you did. You placed your body over hers. You took the fire meant for another. Tell me, human, why? Hayes coughed, his throat dry. His voice was weak but steady. "Because she's a child. That's reason enough." The queen tilted her head as if she did not understand. For her people, the survival of self was law. Sacrifice was seen as madness. Yet here was this human, burned and broken, who had chosen to shield another. Alira did not speak again, but her gaze softened, just slightly. She turned and left the chamber, her robes whispering against the floor. But as she left, Hayes heard another softer voice. The princess stood in the doorway, her silver eyes wide. "You bled for me," Soraya whispered. "Why?" Hayes gave her a faint smile, despite the pain. "Because you matter." And with that, the chamber fell silent again, except for the hum of the healing machines. Far outside, the story was already spreading. Citizens whispered of the strange human who had thrown himself into the fire for the princess. Some called him a hero. Others called him reckless, dangerous, a threat to Valorian values. But one truth had already taken root. On that day, in the royal square, humanity had shown something no Valorian had ever seen before. The medical chamber of Valoria Prime was unlike anything found on Earth. The walls glowed softly with streams of living energy, shifting like rivers of light. Healing machines hovered in silence, their tendrils scanning wounds, knitting flesh, and replacing damaged cells. Alien doctors moved like shadows, their long fingers carrying vials of bright liquid. Commander Daniel Hayes lay on a bed in the center, his body covered in thin silver sheets that pulsed with warmth. His back was bandaged with glowing sealants, and though the pain was sharp, it was far less than he expected. Humans were used to crude field dressings and painkillers. Valorian medicine was far ahead of anything Earth had. Hayes stirred, groaning. The hum of machines echoed in his ears. His vision cleared slowly, and he saw the ceiling arching high above him. Stars painted into the dome, as if to remind patience of the sky. He thought of the moment in the square, the heat, the explosion, the way the princess had looked at him, terrified. His body still ached, but the memory of her safety gave him comfort. The door slid open with a whisper. Queen Alira entered, tall and regal, her robes shimmering faintly in the chamber's glow. Her crown was simple, woven with living crystal that pulsed with the rhythm of her heart. Her glowing eyes fixed on Hayes with an intensity that made even a battle-hardened soldier feel uneasy. Behind her, 2 royal guards stood motionless, their long spears of light crossed against the door. "You are awake again," she said. Her voice was calm but sharp, carrying authority with every syllable. Hayes struggled to sit up, grimacing against the pain. "Your Majesty?" His voice was hoarse. The Queen raised a hand, stopping him. "Remain where you are. You are injured." Hayes leaned back into the bed, exhaling slowly. He studied her, wondering why she had come. Royals rarely visited wounded guards. Alira stepped closer, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. "You risked your life," she said. "For my daughter?" "Yes," Hayes answered simply. "Why?" The word cut through the chamber like a blade. Hayes blinked. "Because she's a child. Because she needed protecting." The Queen's expression shifted, but only slightly. She looked almost disturbed. "You speak as if it were natural. Yet for us, it is not. No Valorian would have done what you did. Sacrifice is against reason. To fall means weakness. To live means strength. That is our way." Hayes gave a faint smile. "On Earth, it's different. Where I come from, we protect children. We protect the innocent, even if it costs us. To us, that's strength." The Queen tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she could not solve. "Strength through loss. I do not understand." "You don't have to," Hayes said softly. "You just need to know your daughter is alive." The chamber grew silent. The only sound was the hum of healing machines. The Queen's eyes narrowed. But there was no anger, only confusion, and something else. Something heavier later that day, as Hayes rested. A small figure slipped into the chamber. It was Princess Soraya. She wore simple robes now, her long hair tied back. Her glowing eyes were large and bright. They carried questions far beyond her years. She stepped quietly to the side of his bed, clutching a small crystal toy in her hands. Hayes turned his head and smiled faintly. "Princess." She shook her head. "Just Soraya." Hayes chuckled softly. "All right, Soraya." She sat down on a chair near him, her hands fidgeting with the toy. "You hurt yourself." "For me?" Hayes nodded. "That's right. Why?" Her voice was soft, but the question was the same as her mother's, filled with confusion. "You could have died. You are not even Valorian. You owe me nothing." Hayes looked at her gently. "I don't need to owe you anything. You're a child. You deserve to live. That's all the reason I need." Soraya stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she whispered, "No one has ever done that for me before." Hayes frowned. "Not even your guards?" "They would fight for me," she said. "They would even kill for me. But to throw themselves into fire for me? No. To us, it makes no sense. They believe protecting me means keeping me away from danger, not sharing it with me." Hayes let her words sink in. He realized then how different their worlds truly were. Two humans, sacrifice for family, for comrades, for children. It was instinct. To Valorians, it was madness. The Queen returned later, finding her daughter still seated beside the human's bed. Alira's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing at first. She simply watched the two. Soraya was smiling faintly now, a rare thing for the often serious princess. At last Alira spoke. "Soraya, you should rest. Leave the human to his healing." Soraya looked up. "Mother, he is not just a human, he is different." Alira's eyes hardened. "Different, yes. And dangerous." Hayes frowned. "Dangerous?" You only broke every law of our nature," Alira interrupted. "By bleeding for another. By risking yourself without calculation. My court debates even now what you mean to us. Some call you a hero. Others call you a threat." Soraya clutched her crystal toy tighter. "He saved me. Twice, Mother. First from the fire, then from the falling stone." "If he had not enough," Alira said sharply, though her voice trembled slightly. She turned to Hayes. "Understand this, human. Your actions have unsettled my people. You are spoken of in every hall, every council. They do not understand you, and what they do not understand, they fear." Hayes met her gaze steadily. "Then let them fear." "I did what was right." Alira's eyes narrowed further. Yet there was no hatred in her gaze. There was only deep, unshakable confusion. Outside the chamber, word spread quickly. Valorian citizens whispered in marketplaces, wondering about the strange human who had thrown himself over the princess. Some said he was a fool, wasting his life. Others said he was a weapon from Earth, designed to manipulate the Queen. But a few spoke with awe, Their voices hushed. He bled for the child. Not his child, not even his kind. And still, he bled. In the streets, children played at pretending to be the human shield, throwing themselves in front of each other with laughter. Parents frowned, worried their culture was being tainted by strange ideas. Within the royal court, nobles argued fiercely. Some demanded Hayes be sent back to Earth at once. Others insisted he remain, at least until his wounds healed, to learn more about his strange ways. But in the Queen's private thoughts, the matter was not political. It was personal. She had watched this man burn for her daughter, not for duty, not for gain, but for something she could not name, and that unsettled her more than anything. That night, Queen Alira stood alone in the grand balcony of her palace. The stars above Valoria burned bright, endless, and cold. Her daughter stood beside her, holding her hand. "Mother," Soraya whispered, "he is not like us. But maybe that is good." Alira looked down at her child, then back at the stars. She had lived her whole life believing survival was the highest law, yet the image of the human bleeding on the stones haunted her. His words echoed, "Because she's a child." That's reason enough. The Queen's confusion deepened, and with it, something dangerous - curiosity. For the first time in many years, Queen Alira did not know what was right. The halls of the Valorian palace were filled with voices. From the tall crystal chambers to the glowing stairways, nobles argued in sharp tones that echoed through the corridors. The story of the human who had bled for the princess spread faster than light, and no one agreed on what it meant. Some called him a hero, others called him a danger, but no one was silent. Commander Daniel Hayes sat in his chamber, his back wrapped in glowing medical bands. Though his wounds still hurt, his body was healing faster than the doctors had expected. Human resilience was becoming a subject of study for them. He sat by the window, staring out at the alien city. Valoria Prime looked peaceful from above its towers gleamed with soft light. Its sky was filled with slow-moving ships. But Hayes had been a soldier long enough to know when peace was fragile. And right now, this peace felt thinner than glass. That morning, the Queen summoned her court to the Hall of Balance. It was a grand chamber shaped like a circle, its walls alive with streams of flowing energy. At the center stood a raised platform where Queen Alira herself sat, her crown shining faintly. Around her, nobles took their seats in high arcs, their robes flowing, their faces stern. Hayes was brought into the chamber by 2 guards. He walked carefully, aware of the stares. The noble's glowing eyes followed him with a mix of curiosity, fear, and hostility. When he stood at the center, the arguments began. "He is a danger to us," one noble said, his voice sharp. "His kind thinks in reckless ways. He proved it when he threw his body in front of the princess. That was not courage, it was madness." Another noble rose. "And yet the madness saved her life. Tell me, counselor, would you rather the child of the Queen had died because no one acted?" The chamber buzzed with low voices. "He did not act for our sake. He acted because his mind is different. We cannot let such creatures near our royals. Send him back to Earth before his strange ways infect our people." More voices joined in. Some agreed, some opposed. Hayes stood silently, his jaw tight. He was used to hostile rooms, but this was different. These were not enemies with weapons. They were leaders with power. Debating whether he should stay or be cast out, finally, Queen Alira raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. Her glowing eyes swept over the nobles, then rested on Hayes. "Speak, human," she said. "They argue over your actions, but I will hear your own words. Why do you think you should remain here?" Hayes met her gaze. "Your Majesty, I did not throw myself over your daughter for politics. I didn't do it to change your people or your laws. I did it because it was the right thing to do. On Earth, we are taught to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is who we are. If you think that makes me a danger, then send me home. But no, if the same moment came again, I would make the same choice." The chamber stirred. Some nobles whispered, shocked at his boldness. Others frowned, angry that a human spoke with such certainty. One elder noble leaned forward. You see, he admits it. He is bound to strange instincts. He will act without thought, without calculation. That is chaos. We must remove him. But another noble stood. She was younger, her robes less grand, but her voice carried. Perhaps it is not chaos. Perhaps it is a strength we do not understand. He faced death, and yet he lived. He shielded our princess, and she was unharmed. Can we not learn from this? The court divided sharply, voices rising again. While the nobles argued, the princess herself entered the hall. Soraya walked quickly to the platform, her small hands clutching her mother's robe. Stop, she cried, her voice trembling but loud. Stop talking about him like he is not here. He saved me. Twice. I would be dead if not for him. And you say he should leave? Then you are all fools. The chamber froze in shock. A princess was not supposed to shout at the court. Nobles stared in silence, their glowing eyes wide. Queen Alira placed a hand gently on her daughter's shoulder, but she did not silence her. She allowed the girl to speak. Soraya turned to Hayes, her eyes wet with tears. Why do they not see? You are not a danger. You are my protector. You are the only one who cared more for me than for yourself. Her words struck the hall like a storm. The nobles whispered again, but softer now, uncertain. A child's voice carried weight when it was the child of the queen. After the meeting, Hayes was escorted back to his chamber. Soraya followed, refusing to leave his side. You shouldn't have spoken like that, Hayes told her gently. Your people don't like being challenged. I don't care, she said stubbornly. You saved me. I will not let them send you away. Hayes gave a tired smile. You're brave, but you need to be careful. Your voice can change things, and that makes enemies. Soraya looked at him seriously. Then let them hate me too. I will stand with you. For the first time in years, Hayes felt something stir in his chest, a warmth. He thought he had lost long ago. That night, while Hayes rested, another event shook the palace. A shadow slipped through the halls. Moving past guards with skill, a dagger of glowing crystal was drawn, its edge sharp enough to cut through armor. The assassin moved toward Soraya's chamber, but Hayes was awake. He had felt the unease all evening, the soldier's instinct warning him. When he heard the faintest sound of the door sliding open, he moved. The assassin lunged toward the princess's bed, but Hayes tackled him from the side. The dagger slashed across Hayes's arm, drawing blood. But he held the attacker down with brute strength. Guards rushed in, seizing the would-be killer. The princess screamed, but Hayes stood tall, blood dripping from his arm, when the assassin's mask was torn away. The truth shocked everyone. It was a noble's servant, sent by a powerful house that opposed the queen. The next morning, the palace shook with new arguments. Some nobles claimed Hayes had staged the attack to make himself look necessary. Others argued that, without him, the princess would already be dead. The queen summoned Hayes privately. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with conflict. You bleed again? She said quietly. Always for her. Hayes shrugged. That's what protectors do. Alira studied him for a long time. You have uncovered a conspiracy among my nobles. That is no small thing. But you must understand, human, you tear at the balance of our world. You make us question everything we believe. Hayes met her gaze firmly. Maybe some things are worth questioning. The queen turned away, her robe whispering against the floor. Her voice was soft but heavy. You are dangerous, Daniel Hayes. Not because of your weapons, not because of your strength, but because you make us doubt our own hearts. Outside, the whispers grew louder. The people spoke of the human not only as a protector, but as a symbol. Children played at pretending to be him. Guards whispered of learning from his courage, and among the nobles, divisions grew sharper. Lines drawn between those who wanted him gone and those who saw him as a gift. For Hayes, it was simple. He had one mission now: keep the princess safe. But he could feel the storm building, a storm greater than plasma bolts and assassins, a storm of culture, a storm of fear. The city of Valoria Prime had always been a jewel of peace. Its towers glowed with steady light, its skies filled with graceful ships moving in perfect order. But on this night, the stars above did not bring calm. They brought war. From the watchtowers came the first alarms. Distant streaks of fire cut across the sky, ships entering the system without permission. At first, the palace guards thought it was only traders or patrols. But when the shapes grew closer, when the scanners revealed their weapons armed, panic spread. The Xerox Dominion, a rival empire, had come. Within hours, their fleet surrounded Valoria Prime. Warships blocked the skies, their cannons glowing with red heat. The Valorian defense fleet tried to form lines, but their numbers were too few. For generations, the Valorians had believed their laws of balance and order would protect them. They had not fought a war in centuries. Now war had come to them. They were unprepared. Inside the palace, the council was in chaos. Nobles shouted, generals argued, and Queen Alira sat at the head of the chamber. Her face calm, but her eyes burning with worry. Daniel Hayes stood near the wall, listening. His wounds had healed enough for him to wear armor again, though his back still ached. He had been a soldier for years, and he recognized the sound of a command room falling apart. They have surrounded us. One general shouted, "We must not act rashly. If we attack, we risk destruction. If we stay still, we will be destroyed anyway." Another argued, "We must surrender and hope for mercy." Voices rose higher, fear drowning reason. Hayes stepped forward. "You can't just sit here and argue. They'll strike soon. You need a plan." The nobles turned to him, some sneering. "And what do you know of war, human?" One demanded. Hayes met his gaze firmly. "Enough to know you're losing already. Your enemy surrounds you. They control the skies. If you wait, you'll be crushed. If you scatter, you'll be hunted. But if you fight smart, you can still win." The chamber buzzed with disbelief. Queen Alira raised her hand. "Speak, Hayes. What would you do?" Hayes stepped into the center, his voice steady. "You're used to balance and order. Lines of soldiers, strict patterns, controlled movements. But that's why they think they can beat you. Because they expect you to fight like machines." He pointed upward, toward the skies. "Humans have fought wars for thousands of years, against enemies bigger, faster, stronger, and we learned one thing. Never fight the way your enemy expects. You fight with surprise. You fight with chaos. You fight to win, no matter what the rules say." The generals frowned. "Chaos, that is not our way." Hayes leaned forward. "It's the only way you'll live." The queen studied him for a long moment. Her nobles whispered furiously, but Alira silenced them with a look. "Very well," she said. "We will give you command of one unit. Show us this chaos you speak of. If you fail, the responsibility will be yours." Hayes nodded. "I'll need volunteers. People willing to fight in ways they're not used to." To his surprise, several guards stepped forward. And then, hesitantly, Saraya herself rose from her seat. "I will join too," she declared. The hall erupted in shock. "No," the queen said sharply. "You are the heir. You cannot," but Saraya lifted her chin. "He has saved me twice. I trust him. If he fights, I will not hide." The queen's face hardened, torn between fear and pride. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Very well, but you will not leave my sight." That night, the battle began. The Xerox Dominion ships rained fire down upon the city. Towers crumbled, streets filled with smoke, citizens ran in terror. The Valorian fleet tried to hold the skies but fell one by one, their rigid formations no match for the Dominion's aggression. Hayes led his small unit through the chaos. Unlike the others, he did not march in lines. He split them into groups, moving fast through alleys and ruins. He set traps, ambushes, and diversions. He turned the city itself into a weapon. A squad of Dominion soldiers stormed a plaza, their armor glowing with power. Hayes ordered his fighters to scatter, drawing the enemy into narrow streets. From windows above, hidden Valorians dropped fire crystals, collapsing the buildings around them. The enemy was crushed under falling stone. In another sector, Hayes taught his unit to fight in pairs. One would distract, the other would strike from behind. The Dominion, used to Valorian discipline, were thrown into confusion. For the first time that night, the enemy bled more than the defenders, but the fight was far from won. Near the palace, a group of Dominion shock troopers broke through the defenses, heading straight for the royal family. Panic spread among the guards. Some wanted to retreat to protect themselves. Hayes cursed under his breath and charged forward. "With me," he shouted. His voice carried with such force that even the hesitant guards followed. The battle in the palace courtyard was fierce. Plasma bolts lit the night, swords of energy clashed, screams filled the air. Hayes fought in the front, his armor scorched, his muscles burning. He struck with precision, not elegance knee to the chest, elbow to the jaw. Blade through the gap in armor, but as the fight raged, Hayes saw Soraya in danger again. A Dominion trooper had slipped past, grabbing the princess by the arm. Without thought, Hayes hurled himself forward. He tackled the soldier, taking the strike meant for her. Pain flared in his side, but he pushed through it, driving his blade into the trooper's chest. Soraya stumbled back, shaken but safe. Hayes turned to her, his voice harsh. "Stay behind me." She nodded, eyes wide with both fear and admiration. The fighting dragged into dawn. Smoke filled the sky, the city burned, and still the Dominion pressed forward. The Valorians were tired, their lines breaking. In the command hall, nobles cried out that it was hopeless. "We cannot win. We must surrender before all is lost." But then from the balcony, Queen Alira saw something remarkable. Hayes's unit, smaller, weaker, fewer, was still holding. They fought with wild courage, moving like no Valorian ever had. And wherever Hayes went, victory followed. The queen turned to her nobles, her voice like steel. "Look at the human. He does not yield. Neither will we. Rally the people. Tell them to fight as he fights. Tell them to fight for their home." The tide began to turn. Citizens joined the battle, throwing stones, fire, anything they had. Guards broke their rigid formations and followed Hayes's chaotic tactics. Ambushes, feints, sudden strikes, they all came together. The Dominion, expecting easy conquest, found themselves trapped in a storm they did not understand by midday. Their fleet began to retreat. Ships pulled away from the city, their fire fading into the distance. The siege had failed. ValoriaPrime still stood when the last enemy ship vanished into the stars. The city erupted with cheers. The people called Hayes's name, though most could barely pronounce it. They raised banners and lights, praising the human who had shown them a new way to fight. Inside the palace, Queen Alira stood before Hayes. He was bruised, bloodied, and exhausted. "But still standing, you fought with madness," she said quietly. "And yet, it worked." Hayes gave a weary smile. "Sometimes madness is what wins wars." Alida looked at him for a long time. In her eyes, there was confusion still, but also respect. "You have saved my daughter again, and you have saved my world." Soraya rushed forward, throwing her arms around Hayes. "You are more than my protector now. You are our shield." The hall echoed with her words, and for once, no noble argued. That night, as the fires of battle died and the city began to heal, Hayes stood alone on the balcony. He looked at the stars, knowing the Dominion would return one day. But he also knew one thing: humanity had shown itself. The Valorians would never forget the man who fought like no one else, who bled not just for a princess but for an entire world. The fires of battle still smoldered across ValoriaPrime. Towers leaned broken against the skyline, their glass and crystal shattered. Streets that once carried music now echoed with the crackle of burning stone. But amid the ruin, life stirred again. Citizens walked out from shelters, helping the wounded, gathering the fallen. Children cried in their mothers' arms. Flags of Valoria were raised over the palace walls, not as a symbol of untouched victory, but of survival. And through it all, one name spread from mouth to mouth, whispered first, then shouted, Hayes. The human soldier had become a legend in a single night. inside the palace. However, the mood was heavier. The Queen's Council gathered again. Their robes stained with dust and ash. They argued as always about the future. The Dominion will return, one noble said grimly. They will not forgive this humiliation. We must prepare for their wrath. Cannot prepare, another countered. Our fleet is shattered, our people broken. We must send envoys, beg for peace before it is too late. Voices rose, each trying to drown the other. Some called for surrender, others for retreat to far colonies. And in the middle of the chamber, Daniel Hayes stood silent. His arms were crossed, his armor scorched black, his eyes fixed on the council table. He had heard debates like this before. Different world, different leaders, but the same fear. Finally he spoke. His voice was rough but carried across the chamber. You talk like the fight is over, but it isn't. You beat them once, and that means they can be beaten again. The nobles scoffed. You think your tricks will work twice? You got lucky, human. Chaos is not a strategy, it is suicide. Hayes stepped forward, his presence sharp as a blade. It isn't chaos. It's adaptation. You lost because you've forgotten how to change. You thought the Dominion would play by your rules. They didn't, and they never will. The room went quiet. Queen Alira leaned back in her throne, her gaze locked on Hayes. And you believe you can teach us this adaptation? You believe you can prepare us for what is to come? Hayes hesitated. He thought of home-Earth, so far away, beyond the stars. He thought of the wars he had fought, the comrades he had lost. He had never asked to be here, never planned to save a princess or a world. Yet here he stood, with their future balanced on his shoulders. Finally he nodded. If you want to survive, you'll need to fight like humans fight. No rules, no waiting. Just whatever it takes. Later, in the Queen's private chamber, the mood was different. Alira dismissed the guards and advisors until only 3 remained herself, Soraya and Hayes. The Queen walked to the balcony, her robes trailing across the floor, and looked out over the smoking city. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, softly, she asked, "Why did you shield her?" Hayes blinked. "What?" She turned to face him, her eyes sharp. "My daughter. Twice now you have thrown your body in front of hers. No soldier is expected to do such a thing." "Why?" Hayes exhaled slowly. "Because she's innocent. Because she didn't deserve to die that way. Because it was the right thing to do." Lyra studied him carefully, as though searching for hidden motives. "She found none. You could have let her fall," she said. "You could have saved yourself. Instead, you chose her life over yours. That choice binds you to us now." Hayes frowned. "I'm not bound to anyone. I did what I had to do." But Soraya stepped closer, her eyes wide with emotion. "No, you did more than you had to. You became my protector, a shield. And now my people call you their shield as well." Hayes looked between them, uneasy. He had never wanted titles, never wanted to be a symbol. Yet here he was, caught in the weight of their words. The next day, the Queen summoned the council again. This time, her decision was already made. She stood tall before the nobles, her voice strong, carrying the authority of a ruler who had made her choice. "The human Daniel Hayes has saved my daughter twice. He has saved our world once. He has shown us a way of war we had forgotten. And so I declare, he will not leave Valoria. He will stay as our protector, our teacher, and our shield." The chamber erupted. "This is madness." One noble shouted, "He is not Valorian. He does not understand our ways. He is dangerous." Another cried, "He will twist us into his kind of beasts." But others, those who had fought beside Hayes, those who had seen his courage, nodded in agreement. Alira silenced the hall with a gesture. "You may call him beast. You may call him outsider. But I call him savior. And as queen, my word is final." Her eyes turned to Hayes. "You will stay." Hayes shifted uncomfortably. He had been ordered many things in his life. To fight, to kill, to survive. But never before had he been ordered to stay. "What if I say no?" he asked quietly. The Queen's voice softened, but her words held no less weight. Then you abandon those who believe in you. You abandon her." She nodded toward Soraya, whose eyes pleaded silently with him. Hayes looked at the princess, then at the city outside. He saw people rebuilding, soldiers training in small groups, with crude versions of the tactics he had taught. They were trying to learn, trying to change, because of him. And he knew then he couldn't walk away. Weeks passed. Valoria Prime became a fortress. Hayes drilled soldiers every day, breaking their rigid habits, teaching them to think for themselves. He showed them ambushes, misdirection, rapid strikes. He made them run until their legs shook, fight until their arms trembled. The nobles called it brutal. Hayes called it necessary. Soraya often watched from the training grounds, her presence lifting the spirits of the recruits. Sometimes she trained with them, refusing to be kept aside. Hayes argued with her about the risk, but in the end he respected her determination. The queen, too, watched. At first in silence, then with growing approval. She saw her people change stronger, fiercer, more alive than they had been in centuries. But Hayes also felt the shadow of the Dominion looming. They would return. And when they did, it would be worse than before. One night, Soraya found him alone on the palace walls. He was staring at the stars, his jaw tight, his hands resting on the railing. "You're thinking of home?" she said softly. Hayes didn't answer right away. Finally, he murmured, "Yeah. I don't even know if Earth knows I'm alive. Maybe they think I'm dead out here." Soraya stepped closer. "Do you want to go back?" He turned to her, conflicted. "Part of me does. But another part knows I can't leave this place unprotected." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe this is your home now." Her words struck him deeper than any weapon had. The next dawn, the queen made her final decision public. In the great square of Valoria Prime, before thousands of citizens, she stood on the high balcony with Soraya and Hayes at her side. Her voice rang across the city. From this day forward, Daniel Hayes of Earth is no longer outsider. He is Valoria's shield. He will stand with us, fight with us, live with us. As long as the Dominion threatens us, he will not leave our side. The people roared in approval. They raised their voices, chanting his name, as not a stranger, but as one of their own. Hayes stood there, uneasy under the weight of their praise. But when he looked at Soraya smiling beside him, and the queen watching him with quiet pride, he realized something. For the first time in years, he was not just a soldier. He was part of something bigger. He was humanity's gift to Valoria. And Valoria had claimed him forever that night. As the city lights glowed again and the stars shone above, Hayes whispered to himself, "They'll come back. And when they do, we'll be ready."